the other place without actually having been there to report it or what their actual thought was.
Yeah, he's setting it up as outright mind reading there, right? No doubt imagining the whoops that were going up at the McCain headquarters. How can you know what someone else is imagining, right? Just by the expression on their face. Good. What was another one someone found in this piece? Yeah, Andrew?
Saying that he belittled attempts by Senator McCain.
Yeah, where was that at?
It was in the top paragraph. To say that he belittled.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of an opinion, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so was it outright mockery, right? We would maybe have to be there if he did say something quite direct, then perhaps we could assume that, but it says, Senator Barack Obama was in Lebanon today. Just the fact of being there doesn't make it controversial against the Republicans in the campaign. Yeah. Another one? Any others? Yeah, Lucas, you have another one?
In the paragraph that begins with "for the record," right it says Mr. McCain's campaign dash. Basically everything that fits in the dash is pretty much mind reading.
Yeah. Well aware of the competition for the women's vote and how this might be interpreted among women voters. How could we know that? How could we know if he does or is not aware of that? Or the way this makes it seem that he's doing that especially for this purpose. So it's kind of knowing the motivations behind it. And it's even set off here kind of stylistically, right, by those dashes. So, good. All right, how about Veep stakes? Yeah, here.
Saying, in the first sentence, Mr. Obama cleared, and then with two of the more speculated about names,
Mm-hmm.
that's reading the minds of basically your audience and like everybody in the nation to say that they're speculative.
Yeah, definitely. How can we guess what the mass public is thinking, right? We just saw that in the last election. The pollsters were completely wrong about what they thought the public was thinking. Yeah. Other ones?
At the end it says, arguably be seen in Mr. Bay's eyes. Like, just because what his eyes look like, you can't really say what he's thinking.
Yeah. I like the end of that line. He cast a vice presidential gaze at Mr. Obama, right? As if he's hoping, right, he wants to be the vice president. If there's a such thing as having a vice presidential gaze, right? Who knows what on earth that is, right? So this is perhaps where a feature story is getting a little bit too flowery, a little bit too creative, maybe trying too hard to do some of that great descriptive work that we've practiced this semester, right? Descriptive writing is really important for feature writing, but this is trying too hard, perhaps. Okay, here's famous, the inauguration of President Lincoln. What are maybe some problems in this one?
Probably gradually realize implementation. The first sentence.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think you were on the next one. How about the one behind
yeah.
that?
Oh,
Lincoln's
yeah.
inaugural?
Oh, it's switched on ours.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh,
2009.
okay, sorry about that. Okay, 2009, okay, sure. Probably gradualizing, yep, that's exactly what I found too. Again, we see those dashes offsetting like an internal dialogue trying to guess what someone is thinking for that next part. And how about the last one then? How about Lincoln's inaugural address? So this was right back before electronics. Often the speeches would be reprinted in the newspaper. And here we have a case where the journalist is then also kind of inserting some commentary or some description. Yeah, Terrence?
On the beginning, it says he was sad and nervous. I don't know if you could actually tell completely if someone was sad and nervous.
Yeah. Does anyone know the history of Mr. Lincoln? Isn't he kind of looks grave quite often and kind of very skinny, kind of looks pale, sickly? I think it could be hard to tell if someone's nervous or sad. Maybe they had too much caffeine, so they're jittery, right? Yeah, or someone might look solemn, maybe they're sleepy, maybe he didn't get enough sleep and he's sad, right? Look at Barack. In my speech class, I'm showing some speeches of him at the start for his famous Audacity of Hope, and then now, today. He's aged, I'll tell you. I wouldn't say he's sad though, but if you looked at him then and then today, he definitely has a different demeanor. Trying to interpret whether there's an emotion behind it, that's pretty difficult, I think, right? That's kind of mind reading. Okay, and I found one more in there at the end. But whether from reflection upon the failure of his administration, I can't say. So here it's kind of just inserting this idea of what the president might be thinking about, but not stating it explicitly. So kind of inserting some bias in here as well, for sure. All right, kind of an aside, the Gettysburg Address by President Lincoln is another famous speech, and it was very short and criticized for being short and pretty difficult for people there at the battle to understand as well. And that was reprinted in the newspaper and really appreciated more in the news than the audience that was even there during that time. So kind of just an interesting aside here for how important the newspaper was, even for political and strategic communication during the time. That speech was like a memorial to all the fallen dead soldiers in Gettysburg, and also it had to motivate the soldiers to continue to fight the war so that they could win over the South. So it was like a really important speech that was trying to do several things at once and became really spread widely through the news. All right. So now let's move on to the next activity here, and this will, I think, wrap us up for the day and kind of help us cap off ethics and law. Again, I'm teaching communication law next semester, Com275, so if you're curious about taking that, I really recommend it for the practicing media professional, those who are especially going to be creating works for the public sphere. There are also applications of that class for general free speech, for protest speech. We look at various issues in creative works, copyright, pornography, all kinds of cases at various levels. But I think it's especially helpful for the practicing professional. So if you guys wouldn't mind, if you could now, on my courses, open up false equivalency exercise. And so this is when, as journalists, right, we have this value in us called objectivity that we're supposed to really live up to be objective. You guys, I'm sure, have learned through your capstone projects and whatnot about being objective when you conduct research, not having a subjective view. But it's difficult, right? We all have subjective views initially, but we hold journalism as kind of this institution up to this higher value, this goal. And so to do that, often we try to create this idea that stories are fair and balanced. So if we were a scale of justice and say we're covering a political issue, we would represent both a Democrat side and a Republican side, or give various sides of an issue equal say. So we can do that overall in journalism by, as I said, kind of having these scales and showing these disparate viewpoints. We can increase that level of objectivity by also adding that third source, that inside look from maybe an expert or a scholar, or from a member of the public to show how maybe the public views or thinks of this issue as well. So not just the stakeholders, but also those who are affected or those with some special knowledge that can explain it more for people. So that's kind of our hope for being objective. If we really apply the scales then, we could also think about how we construct the stories even. So we would maybe want to give a quote to each side of an issue. We would want to allow a good paragraph or two, kind of a central paragraph for each side to be able to state its case. Maybe if we're using other elements like pictures for our stories, we would have a picture of each candidate perhaps in a local election or something. So we can think of fair and balanced and objectivity. And so what we strive for is this idea of equivalence, of when we provide different viewpoints on an issue to show both sides, right? And try to do this scales of justice type deal. But sometimes maybe we overrepresent the scales. So maybe there's a minority viewpoint that is getting a lot of attention and distorts the conversation, makes it actually appear like the issue is equal, there's equal sides of this. However, maybe there's not. Maybe the evidence shows that overwhelmingly this side is correct, and this is actually just a fringe group or something, right? There was many different calls out about this made in the past election saying, you're giving President-elect Trump too much attention at times because he's great at using the media, right? He's great at creating a spectacle and getting lots of coverage, which he's smart to do that, right? But the New York Times, as we talked about last week, and other media said, we kind of ran with that sensationalism and we didn't focus on the issues maybe enough. Maybe we should have focused on policy more since this is an elected position or whatnot. So just throwing ideas out there, right? Not stating my own opinion either way. But so we see this at various times, okay? Where the media is trying to create this equivalency, and maybe tries too hard to do it, or doesn't do it enough, right? So it's a social institution. So let's read through these directions here. Could someone else read these for me? Read through the specifics. Thanks, Andrew.
Split into your assigned small groups, review each of the statements or passages below and identify the biased statements. Rewrite the passage to fix the problems, reconvene as a large group to discuss the issues and come to consensus on improved writing for each passage.
So this is to learn how to present fair, objective information without resorting to false equivalence. So creating a false scales that shows equal on both sides. So your task, read the examples below and identify the elements that exhibit false equivalence. Revise them to present the information in an objective, fair manner. You may need to engage in some web-related research to see if the examples are exhibiting false equivalence or if they're reasonable or objective, okay? So the first one, let's take a look at this one together. Maybe you guys know about this a bit. Some scientists argue that humans are partly to blame for the rapid warming of the Earth, while other scientists disagree. How is that showing equivalency, first of all? Is it showing equivalency? Yeah, Terrence?
Some scientists agree and some don't agree about the subject.
Mm-hmm. They're pretty flat out saying there's some that say this and some that say that, right? So we might look up what the research actually says. Okay, so let's maybe just do a quick little Google search. Scientists' views on climate change. Something like that. You can keyword search whatever you think. Here we go. Surveys of scientists' views on climate change. Okay. This one's showing who's publishing, but not their views. Importance. Anyone finding any data? here's one from NASA, scientific consensus, Earth's climate is warming. Here we go. Multiple